The moment we launched this game, I knew something was off. You know that strange heaviness in your chest when you walk into a dark room and immediately feel like you're not alone. That's exactly what hit me. Normally, FNAF games kick off with some kind of vibe. You get a phone call, a quirky little tune, maybe some static-filled instructions that make you laugh before the real fear sets in. But this one, nothing, no music, no phone guy, no instructions, just silence, and buried under that silence this faint hum, like an old machine buzzing from somewhere you can't see. It didn't feel like background noise, it felt alive. I sat there staring at the main menu. The title was glitched, letters faded like they'd been burned into the screen and then erased. The animatronic on the start screen wasn't one I recognized either. It looked like Freddy, but his body was distorted, stretched, like the pixels themselves were melting. My friend leaned over and said, "That's gotta be a fan edit, right?" But even he didn't sound convinced. I laughed it off, pretending I wasn't unnerved, but my hands were already clammy on the mouse. We clicked new game. The screen faded to black, and for a second I thought it froze. Then, slowly, an office appeared, but not the one we knew. The walls were darker, smeared with stains. The desk was bare. There was no fan, no comforting little details that usually remind you you're still just playing a game. The room felt hollow, like we weren't supposed to be there. I started clicking around. Cameras worked, but they didn't look right either. Rooms had strange layouts, some connected in ways that didn't make sense, like a maze. A few rooms had nothing but flickering lights, while others had figures. Not moving, not doing anything, just standing there in the shadows. At first, I thought it was the usual lineup of animatronics, but when the static cleared, I realized these weren't the same characters. They were altered. Freddy's hat looked torn. Bonnie's head was tilted in a way that looked broken, and Chica's eyes were black, like holes drilled straight into her face. I tried to laugh it off again like, okay, so this is just some weird reskin, no big deal. But the longer we stared, the more wrong it felt. The controls didn't work right. The doors wouldn't respond when I clicked them. The light buttons glitched, and the clock didn't move. My friend whispered, "Are we even on night one?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. The game wasn't telling us anything. Then came the sound, not footsteps. Not the cheerful giggling or robotic groans we'd come to expect. This was deeper, a hum, so low it rattled through the speakers and into my bones. The more I listened, the more I realized it wasn't just a hum. It was voices, distorted, layered, like a group whispering in some language I couldn't understand. My skin prickled, my throat tightened, and I suddenly wanted to shut the laptop and walk away. But we didn't, because curiosity always wins. Right, I kept flipping cameras, and that's when we caught it. Movement at first, it was just a shadow, small, quick, but when the static cleared, it was there, Freddy. Or something wearing Freddy's skin. His face leaned toward the camera, mouth hanging open far too wide, like his jaw had been unhinged. And those black eyes empty, endless, staring straight at us. My friend whispered, "Oh no," and I swear I could feel his hand grip the chair next to me. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just another FNAF game. It wasn't built to be beaten. It wasn't even built to be understood. The way the screen flickered, the way the sound dug into your chest, it felt like the game wasn't interested in scaring us. It was studying us, and then, right as I went to switch the camera again, everything froze. The screen went black, and something whispered. That whisper didn't sound like anything from the FNAF series. It wasn't the phone guy. It wasn't any voice line I recognized. It was soft, broken, layered with static, almost like it came from the other side of the screen. I leaned back instinctively, as if putting distance between me and the laptop would somehow help. The words weren't clear, but the tone was enough to freeze my blood. It wasn't guiding us, it wasn't warning us, it was dismissing us. Like we weren't supposed to be here at all. The game cut back in, and the cameras flickered alive again. Only now the rooms weren't the same. The hallways stretched longer, darker, the geometry twisted in ways that made no sense. What was once a simple pizzeria layout looked more like a labyrinth. I flipped through the feeds, and every time I did, I caught something new: shadows in the corners, shapes in the background, and then animatronics. They weren't moving normally. In classic FNAF, you catch them shifting positions, sneaking closer one step at a time. But here, they didn't walk, they just appeared. One moment Freddy was across the map, the next moment he was 3 rooms away, his head tilted, staring into the camera. Bonnie's face kept glitching, jerking so fast it looked like he was vibrating in and out of the walls. Chica, her head twisted upside down, her eyes rolling like they weren't even attached. And Foxy, oh, Foxy was the worst. Instead of sprinting down the hall like he's supposed to, he just dragged his claws against the floor, leaving deep gouges in the tiles. We were silent, just watching, frozen. Then my friend whispered that humming again. He was right. The low, deep drone returned, only this time it was louder, sharper. It sounded like chanting, dozens of voices, overlapping, repeating some word I couldn't catch. My chest started to tighten. It didn't feel like an audio file. It felt like someone was in the room with us, murmuring right into our ears. I tried clicking the doors again, desperate for something to work. Nothing. The buttons lit up, but the doors didn't close. The game wanted us exposed. It wanted us vulnerable. And then the power meter started draining, way too fast. In seconds, we dropped from 90% to 50%. I checked the clock. It still said 12 a.m. It hadn't moved at all. My friend laughed nervously. We're stuck. We're actually stuck. But I could hear in his voice it wasn't funny. The cameras glitched, static poured across the feed, and the room warped again. I saw posters on the walls, but they weren't the usual cutesy drawings. They were dark, smeared, like someone had painted with ash. The animatronics weren't even standing still anymore. They were twitching. I clicked back to the office, praying for a second of safety, but the office looked different too. The walls were darker, the shadows stretched longer, like the game was decaying right in front of us. Then, right as I thought the power would cut out completely, the screen went black. No static, no game over jingle, just pure black, and then footsteps, slow, heavy, echoing as if someone was walking right outside the office door. I held my breath, staring at the screen, waiting for a jump scare. My friend whispered, "Don't move," like moving would make it worse. The footsteps stopped. Silence. For 5 long seconds we sat in pitch black, praying it was over. Then the whisper returned, clearer this time, low, broken, filled with static. But I could hear the words, "You shouldn't be here." The screen lit up again with a violent flicker, and my stomach dropped. The cameras had changed completely. The rooms were unrecognizable. Hallways stretched into infinity, doors missing, walls warped like the building itself had twisted into some impossible shape. And standing in the center of one of the halls, half in shadow, half illuminated by a dying light, was Freddy. Only this wasn't Freddy as we knew him. His body sagged like the suit was melting, his head tilted unnaturally far to one side, and his jaw hung open like it had been broken in half. His eyes weren't eyes, they were empty sockets, glowing faintly red in the center like burning embers. He didn't move, he didn't twitch, he just stared, and then the chanting started again, louder. So loud I had to pull my headphones slightly off my ears, because it felt like it was drilling into my skull. My friend whispered, "It's not the game, it can't be just the game." And for the first time that night, I realized he might be right, because the sound wasn't just in the headphones anymore. It was in the room, surrounding us, and that's when we saw it. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the speakers. You know, when audio glitches, and it feels like it's bouncing around your room. But this wasn't that. The chanting wasn't coming from the laptop anymore. It was around us, above us, behind us, circling like invisible voices closing in. My skin prickled, my breath caught in my throat, and for the first time all night, I had the thought, maybe we should stop. But curiosity always wins. We forced ourselves to keep playing. The cameras flickered again, static dancing across the screen, and when it cleared, Freddy was gone. Just gone. I switched to another feed empty, another still empty, until finally, on the third camera, I found him. But he wasn't standing still anymore. He was closer, way closer, his hollow eyes aimed directly at the lens, his head jerking every few seconds like a broken puppet. Then something else happened. The feed froze not on static, not on black, but on Freddy's face, and while I stared, I swear his mouth began to move. The game had no audio file for this, no lines for Freddy, and yet, faintly, through the static, I heard the whisper again. "Leave," I froze. My friend just muttered, "No way." No way? We both leaned in closer to the screen like idiots, as if that would help us figure it out. And then the feed snapped back, and everything was different. The building had changed again. Rooms we had seen before were gone, new ones appeared. The camera map stretched further than before, with hallways that spiraled into darkness. I checked one of the feeds, and my stomach flipped. Room was filled with animatronics, but not the usual ones. These were prototypes, test models. They looked unfinished, their metal endoskeletons exposed, wires hanging loose like torn veins. Some had faces half stitched on, eyes missing, jaws barely hanging. It was like the game had dragged in versions of characters that weren't supposed to exist. And then they all turned, at the exact same moment, toward the camera, toward us. My heart was pounding now. My hands were slick with sweat, the mouse slipping in my grip. My friend whispered, "Don't switch, Aunt Switch," but I did anyway. I couldn't help it, and what I saw next, I wish I hadn't. The office feed was no longer safe. The walls were covered in writing. Black, smudged like it had been painted with ash or burned into the texture. At first, it was impossible to read. Then my eyes focused, and I saw it clearly. "We see you," over and over, written across every inch of the wall, floor, and desk. And sitting right in the middle of the office, where the fan should have been, was that plushie again. Except now it was bigger, twice the size. Its button eyes stared into the camera lens, its stitched grin stretching wider than before. It looked alive. I shut the monitor instantly, my chest tight, my throat closing like I couldn't breathe. My friend muttered, "It's a mod, it has to be a mod, it has to," but even he sounded like he was trying to convince himself, not me. The chanting hadn't stopped. If anything, it was louder now, pressing in from every corner of the room, and then the lights in-game flickered. For a split second, the office wasn't empty anymore. Someone was standing in the doorway, just a silhouette, no face. No details, just a human shape, too tall, too thin, blocking the exit. I blinked and it was gone. The doorway was empty again, but I couldn't shake it. That thing wasn't animatronic. It wasn't part of the game. It felt wrong, like it was watching from the other side. I reached for the escape key, ready to quit, to shut it all down, but before I could press it, the screen glitched violently. Static flooded every inch and the chanting cut off, replaced by something worse, a single voice, clearer than before, slow, deliberate, "You shouldn't be here." But this time it didn't sound like it was coming from the game. It sounded like it was coming from right behind us. The second that voice echoed behind us, I felt every hair on my neck stand on end. I didn't even want to turn around. My instinct screamed, "Don't look," because if I did, maybe I'd see something I didn't want to see. My friend leaned closer to the laptop, his voice shaky. "Please tell me you heard that too." I didn't answer, because admitting it out loud would have made it too real. I forced myself to look back at the screen. The static faded, and the West Hall camera lit up. Freddy was there again, standing dead center, but his eyes weren't glowing. They weren't even red this time. They were just black pits, sucking in the light, as if staring into them could pull you in. His jaw creaked open slowly, wider and wider, until it looked like it might split the suit in half. Then the feed snapped. For a single second, I didn't see Freddy, I saw myself, my own reflection staring back, warped, pale, like the game had replaced his face with mine. I slammed the monitor shut so hard I almost broke the keyboard, but closing the monitor didn't help. The office wasn't the same anymore. The posters were gone. The walls were stained, scratched with deep claw marks. The ceiling fan was missing, and in its place, sitting right on the desk, was that plushie again, except now it wasn't stitched with a grin. Its mouth was open, wide, showing tiny, jagged teeth that shouldn't have been there. My friend swore under his breath and reached for the laptop lid like he was ready to shut it all down. I stopped him. I don't even know why. Maybe it was adrenaline. Maybe it was stupidity. But I wanted to know what would happen next. And then we heard it, breathing, not in the game, not through the headphones, in the room with us. Slow, ragged breaths, pulling in air like something enormous was leaning right over our shoulders. My heart was thundering so hard I thought it might break my ribs. I whispered, "Do you hear that?" But my friend didn't say a word. He just pointed. Behind me, I spun around instantly. Nothing. Just the glow of the laptop painting the walls in sickly blue. No figures, no shadows, nothing, but the breathing didn't stop. It was louder, closer, like whoever or whatever it was hadn't moved when I turned. It was still there, inches away, invisible. I forced my eyes back to the screen. That's when I realized something was even worse. The office door was open. I hadn't clicked it. We hadn't touched a thing, and yet there it was, wide open, leading into pitch-black nothingness. We stared into that void on the monitor, holding our breath, waiting, and then, faintly, in the dark, two small dots appeared. At first I thought they were pixels, but no, they were eyes, glowing faintly, unblinking, staring straight into the office. Straight at us. The power meter bottomed out. The lights shut down. The monitor went dead. My stomach twisted as I braced for the jump scare, Freddy screaming, static, game over. That's what should have happened, but instead the screen didn't show the game, it showed us, our faces. Right there in the webcam feed, staring into the laptop like idiots. My own reflection blinking back at me, my friend pale as a ghost. The game wasn't watching the pizzeria anymore, it was watching us, recording us. I felt my blood run cold. I wanted to slam the lid shut, but before I could move, the screen glitched again and something else appeared. For a split second, right between the static, another figure showed up in the frame behind us, tall, thin, human-shaped, and then it was gone. We just sat there frozen, staring at the laptop, too afraid to even breathe. My brain was screaming at me to move, to do something, but my body wouldn't listen. That glimpse of the tall, human-shaped figure in the frame, it wasn't like the animatronics. It wasn't Freddy, Bonnie, or any of the ones we knew. This was something else, something that didn't belong. And worst of all, it was behind us. I whipped my head around so fast my neck popped. The room looked empty. Just the same dim light, the same peeling wallpaper, the faint hum of the laptop, nothing, but the air felt heavy, thicker than before. Like the oxygen had been sucked out, replaced with something colder. My friend whispered, "Don't turn back." His voice cracked when he said it, like he wasn't even sure why, but he just knew. My skin crawled. I didn't want to turn back to the screen, but I did anyway, and that was my mistake. The webcam feed was still on, still showing us. Only now, there was no one sitting in my chair. My friend was there terrified, pale, but where I should have been the chair was empty. The screen was telling me I wasn't there anymore. I felt my chest lock up. That's not possible, I whispered, but even saying it didn't make sense. My hands gripped the sides of the desk until my knuckles went white. I leaned closer, half hoping my reflection would just flicker back into place. And then the screen glitched. My reflection came back, but it wasn't me, not really. The thing in the chair looked like me, but its smile was too wide, stretching unnaturally across its face, and its eyes its eyes were solid white. No pupils, no light, just white voids staring back at me. I recoiled so hard I nearly knocked the chair over. My friend slammed the laptop shut instantly, like that would erase it. The screen went black, but the reflection burned into my head. Silence swallowed the room, no more breathing, no static. Just a horrible, crushing silence that made my ears ring. I thought it was over, maybe the laptop had finally given up, but then one single knock on the door to our room. We both jumped to our feet. The knock came again slow, deliberate, like whoever was out there knew we were inside. I wanted to believe it was just someone messing with us, but it was 3 a.m. No one was awake. No one even knew we were playing. The third knock was louder. The walls seemed to vibrate with it. My friend grabbed my arm, his voice almost a whimper. "Don't answer it. Please don't answer it." But here's the thing. The knock didn't come from the door anymore. The sound was coming from inside. The laptop, from the speakers. Like whatever was outside wasn't trying to get into our room. It was trying to get out of the game. We didn't move. We didn't even breathe. And then the knocking stopped. For a second, I felt relief, but it was worse than anything, because the silence broke with a new sound, the door in the game creaking open, slowly, painfully, like the hinges were screaming. Screen flickered back on by itself, no input, no keyboard, just on, and what it showed made my blood turn to ice. The camera view was back, staring into the pizzeria hallway, only this time it wasn't empty. Something was crawling out of the darkness on all fours, jagged and broken, limbs bending in ways they shouldn't. It wasn't Freddy, it wasn't Bonnie, it wasn't even human anymore. And as it dragged itself closer, the static grew louder, drowning out every other sound. I reached for the laptop, desperate to shut it again, but my friend grabbed my wrist and hissed, "Don't touch it. Don't give it what it wants." But then the thing on the screen stopped crawling. It tilted its head. Slowly, directly toward the camera, and in that moment I realized it wasn't crawling out of the hallway. It was crawling toward us. That thing froze on the screen, head tilted, staring at us with its faceless grin. I swear the room got colder, like ice creeping through the floorboards. The static roared, swallowing every thought in my head, and then bang. The lights went out. The laptop died completely this time. Darkness, pitch black, just me, my friend, and the sound of my own heartbeat punching through my chest. I fumbled for my phone flashlight, but before I could even turn it on, that breathing came back, not from the laptop. Not from the door, right behind us, loud, wet, hungry. I couldn't take it anymore. I lunged for the laptop, slammed it shut as hard as I could, and yanked the power cord out of the wall. My friend was screaming at me to stop touching it, but I didn't care. I was done. I was ready to throw the thing out the window if I had to. Then silence, absolute silence, not even the breathing, just nothing. We sat there, staring into the dark, waiting for something, anything to happen. 10 seconds, 20, a full minute. My heart started to settle, and I almost laughed. Maybe it was all in our heads. Maybe sleep deprivation and paranoia were messing with us. But then my phone buzzed, a notification. From an unknown number. I unlocked it without thinking and almost dropped it when I saw the message. It was a single image, a screenshot from the game, the same exact moment we'd shut the laptop. Only in this picture I wasn't sitting there. I wasn't in the chair. The thing with the white eyes was, staring directly into the camera, smiling. My friend saw it over my shoulder and just muttered, "Nope." He didn't even argue. He grabbed his jacket, his keys, and bolted out of my room like his life depended on it. And me, I just sat there staring at that photo, trying to convince myself it wasn't real, that it was a glitch, that my phone was hacked, that maybe I'd gone insane. But the worst part, when I finally worked up the courage to look back at the laptop one last time, the plushie was gone. The desk was empty. I'm telling you now, this was the most confusing FNAF game we've ever touched. Not because of the mechanics, not because of the lore, but because to this day, I still can't explain what happened in that room. Maybe it was just a cursed build. Maybe it was a prank gone too far. Or maybe, just maybe, it wasn't a game at all. So if you're thinking of downloading random Five Nights at Freddy's files at 3 a.m., don't trust me. Because the last thing you want is to see yourself staring back at you with eyes that don't belong. Safe to say, we're never opening that game at night again.